and she would have been very anxious about the amount of time that Harry would have spent with Charles, because she wouldn't want Charles to get upset or stressed about issues if indeed that was on Harry's mind.
Are you serious?
Let's take it at face value. Let's assume Harry was there doing his filial duty. He would have, after the King phoned him, which we know he did over the weekend at the time of his illness diagnosis.
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
One can picture Harry saying, "Pa, I'll be there. I'll come at once." And Harry saying, "Dear boy, darling boy, there's no need for that. But if you want to come, of course, you'll be very welcome." But just how welcome and for how long it
Wait for it.
is throwing up endless speculation. I mean, why didn't Harry spend the night at Clarence's house, his old bedroom upstairs? Those bedrooms no longer exist.
Well, it's a dressing room now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And why didn't Charles say, "Come up to Sandringham and let's have a few days in Norfolk"? We don't think that happened either. So there are all these imponderables, but yes, it was a very interesting insight.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, Richard Eden? A half-hour meeting and a reported hotel stay, you know.
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
The family's got more rooms in their houses than anyone in Britain. It doesn't really feel like the open arms welcome that perhaps Harry might have wanted.
No, but it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, you know, we all understand that Harry, when he was told that his father
Wait for it.
had this diagnosis, will have wanted to be with him. But there was something about the way that the press statement was made very quickly, you know, within half an hour. It sort of felt like he also wanted it to be known that he had to go there. It was,
Stop it.
you know, for public consumption. And that sort of made people uncomfortable, I think. And then he comes, and who, you know, wants to meet Harry now? That's the thing. Remember, you know, he's lost touch with a lot of his old friends. They're,
Fact.
you know, in his memoirs, he admitted that people contacted him after the appalling Oprah Winfrey interview to tell him, "We thought what you did was wrong." He mentioned the Van Cutsem family, you know, some of his best old friends.
Are you serious?
And, you know, these are people that normally he'd want to stay, but, you know, perhaps his old friends don't really want to see him
Feels
now.
like it's just not his country anymore in a way.
That's the thing. It's tricky. You know, he's taken himself away from that.
Fact.
And now he's a bit of a stranger when he comes. So it's an odd situation.
And picking up Richard Kay's point, why not just stay at Sandringham?
Well, he needs to be invited, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But also,
What?
so Sandringham now, oh dear, you know, it's got terrible memories for him, because that's where they had the Sandringham Summit, you know, where he talks about that at great length in his memoirs, how, you know, that was a fait accompli. It was kind of, he
Wait for it.
felt that it was, he was told that he had to leave and quit duties and, you know, bring back a lot of bad memories from there. So I'm not sure he'd be rushing back to Norfolk in a hurry.
Amid the royal health crisis, there was some eyebrow-raising news from Montecito
Are you serious?
when the Duke and Duchess of Sussex revealed a revamp of their website, which was seen by many here as controversial. Here, Natasha Livingston explains why, and Richard Kay and Sarah Vine give their reactions.
It's sussex.com, which is a new invention. It's a kind of relaunching of the Archewell website, which was kind of a front for their business and philanthropic aims. And part of the explanation that was given is that, firstly, their team say that Sussex is their name, so they're just using that. And
That doesn't make sense.
secondly, Archewell was kind of too favourable to their first child, and using the Sussex name is kind of more unifying for the family. Obviously, it's put quite a few noses out of joint.
Yes, some people are saying
Sussex is
it's a
not their
betrayal of the Queen.
Yeah. Yes. Well, in their deal, when they left as working royals, they said that they would not use their titles, which of course Sussex is, for any kind of business work or financial gain, and this kind of sits in an awkward position.
Are you serious?
With that.
Now, Richard, obviously supporters of the Sussexes have said and might say it's their name, it's still their crest, why shouldn't they use it?
Yeah, I get that, but I also don't quite get why they want to do this. Let's not forget that the Sussexes are the anti-royal royals. They loathe the institution, judging by everything they have said and written about them since they left Britain. And yet they can't seem to
Wait for it.
sever the bond this link is irresistible, it seems.
Yeah.
And one doesn't have to be cynical about this because clearly there are financial benefits from being associated with the monarchy, not being against it.
And you wrote in your column, Sarah, didn't you, that they are beyond redemption and that you'd like to see the King take a more drastic step.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say Sussex is not their name, it's their title. Their name is Mountbatten Windsor.
That's why I was confused.
So it's different. The Sussex is a title that was conferred
Wait for it.
upon them on their marriage by the late Queen. It's not their name. So that is wrong when they say that. And if it is, the only way it could be their name is if they changed it to Sussex by deed poll, which would be an extraordinary thing to do. I think we heard yesterday, didn't we, Natasha, that the children are now apparently called Sussex.
Yeah, it was a report in the Times that that's how the children, they're going about that name instead of Mountbatten Windsor, so that's what they're using.
Right.
Whether or not it's been a legal change, it's not quite clear.
Fact.
But yeah, they're using it.
But I think this is quite dangerous territory for them, because it is a title, and there could be implications because it's not their name. It's just not their name. Their family name is Mountbatten Windsor.
Now, what...
Boggles, but remember we've had register office weddings before, of course, with our King. King Charles and Camilla got married at Windsor Register Office, and they had a service of blessing afterwards. So there's no reason why Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury,
Wait for it.
might not have a service of blessing for...
Just nip round to the garden again?
Well, it might be a backyard ceremony like it was, for Harry and Meghan a few days earlier.
Yeah.
So he's available for all these kind of ceremonies. So... I think why not have a party again? I mean, maybe not. I'm not sure we'll have crowds in the Mall, frankly, but it could be, maybe a few crowds outside Windsor Register Office.
Don't pretend you wouldn't be there with your periscope again.
Well, come on, the guest list would be great, wouldn't it? Who would be on that guest list?
Oh my gosh, Rebecca, you know the Duchess a bit. Well, probably more than a bit. If you were a very close friend of hers, what would you advise her?
Run. I mean, flippantly, but I'm not sure it would be good for either of them, I have to say. Then they'd be really entwined together, and if things ever go wrong, they're both going to get pulled down, aren't
where's
they?
your sense of romance? Come on.
Stop it.
I'm not the
where
most
do you think they
romantic
are at the
type
moment,
anyway,
Rebecca?
Richard.
They're pretty down, aren't they?
Yeah, well,
There's only one way, and it's up.
That's true. I mean, obviously, there is a friendship there, isn't there, that clearly gives them both comfort. And to be
Wait for it.
fair, they've been great parents. Their daughters are a real credit to them, so they've done something right. I'm not sure they need to go a little bit further and kind of put an official stamp on it.
But let's remember that they've been acting, like a married couple for years. I mean, I remember Rebecca...
Stop it.
Revealing a great story that they'd bought a Swiss ski chalet together. This was years ago. It's since been sold, as well as living together at Windsor. So they're almost like a married couple now, aren't they?
Actually, it just reminded me, my young son saw the story
Wait for it.
I'd written about Fergie this week, and he said, he couldn't pronounce Fergie, he said, who's this Fergus woman? And I said, well, she's Prince Andrew's ex-wife, but they still live together. And he just looked at me and went, why?
That sounds like Prince Philip. He always kept saying, why?
You see,
Oh my
the children
gosh.
say it as they see it, don't they?
Well, look, let's be serious for a minute, because obviously Richard Kay, after both Sarah's cancer diagnoses, she's used the
Wait for it.
opportunity to raise awareness of those conditions, breast cancer, skin cancer, and the King seemingly, or at least, followed her lead when talking about his enlarged prostate. It seems unthinkable that this would have happened even 10 years ago.
Well, I mean, there's a kind of a myth going around that the royals never
That doesn't make sense.
shared details about their ailments. I mean, I remember when both the Queen and her mother, the Queen Mother, had hip work in the Queen Mother's case, and the Queen had knee problems. And the
Wait for it.
palace were up front and explained what they were having done. I think we've been slightly blindsided because when Prince Philip was alive, there was a lot of controversy when details of an ailment he had at the time was revealed, and he took grave exception to it and said that his privacy had been invaded. And ever since, the palace then started getting very cautious about what they said about royal ill health, and this has been quite a...
Wait for it.
step change in this last couple of weeks with the revelations.
I think they did learn a big lesson after Queen Elizabeth when she had an overnight hospital stay, and they not just kept it from us, they deliberately steered us in the wrong direction, and then emerged she had been. And there was a great deal of anger. We're saying if our head of state is, we understand that she wouldn't tell us every appointment she goes to, but if our head of state is overnight having hospital tests,
Okay.
really we should know about it.
In early February, the news about the King got worse as it was revealed that he was undergoing treatment for an undisclosed form of cancer. It was a huge shock for royal watchers. Here, Rebecca and Richard Eden give us their immediate reactions.
I mean, a cancer diagnosis is a shock for anyone. It's a shock for him, it's a shock for his wife, it's a shock for his family. But they really have caught it at a very, very early stage. It's not prostate cancer, but it was discovered as a result of that operation. He went in for the other week for an enlarged prostate. And so my understanding is they found it at a very, very early stage, and that the prognosis is incredibly good.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because the palace had to decide, particularly in the wake of that openness about his previous condition, they've had to decide how to break the news. And I suppose one factor has been that
Wait for it.
Mm.
they haven't wanted the King to be caught in like an underhand way going in for treatment.
Exactly, and that's actually something they've stressed to us they really want to avoid. And in being as open as they could be, they have, begged people to give him the privacy he needs and deserves, and actually is entitled to, while he undergoes this treatment. And I think, we think back a few years, they would never have even discussed this normally. And I know there are some people who've said, why haven't they gone further than confirm he's got cancer? Why haven't they said what kind of cancer it was? And as someone at the palace said to me, it's a real balance between him being head of state and actually his rights as an individual.
Fact.
To keep his private medical information to himself. So, I think they've juggled that balance very well, I have to say, in what they've told us.
It's interesting. I've just come from doing morning television where Richard Madeley said there was a time at TVAM when you were not even allowed to say the word cancer on air. So now we're at a point where our royal family's being open about such a condition. And I think, Richard, it's probably not an exaggeration to say that the news has shocked the nation, and I think a lot of the inquisitiveness is about concern.
It really has been a shock. I mean, there's something about the royal family that sort of hits you, almost as if it's a member of your own family, and there's barely a family in Britain that hasn't been touched by cancer at some point. That word, as you said, was almost taboo, the C word. People didn't use the word cancer. And let's be clear how sort of historically important this is. There has never been a monarch of our country where...
Wait for it.
They've said that he had cancer. I mean, remember that, in the case of his grandfather, George VI, he underwent an operation and they just said that it was to do with structural changes to his lungs.
What?
He actually had a lung removed because of it was so cancerous.
That is a structural change.
And he wasn't even told himself what had happened exactly. So, for them to make this announcement in this way, it really is sort of
Almost there.
momentous.
One result of this news was that the role and responsibility of Prince William was thrust into the limelight. Here, Richard Kay discusses that and the chatter among constitutional experts about the possibility of a regency.
It is a big moment, of course it is.
Okay.
And he knows that he's going to have to step up. But quite how it's going to be played out, as Rebecca says, we're not entirely sure yet. The palace love playing everything down. Everything is always calm, but underneath the surface, their feet are going like that. And there must be concern about how they're going to actually manage public expectation, how they're going to manage the roles of the senior royals in the coming.
Stop it.
coming weeks and probably months, as Rebecca says.
Well, and also they probably won't be too fond of a lot of the chat going on at the moment from constitutional experts who are, one described where were as a soft regency, another as this being
That doesn't make sense.
a potential constitutional crisis, putting a burden on William. What do you think is the facts in that?
Well, I don't think we're at a constitutional crisis yet, but we are in uncharted waters. We haven't had a monarch
Hey, y'all, come look at this.
receiving this kind of treatment since the days of King George VI. And in those days, that was the late Queen's father, of course, the public wasn't really kept informed of what his illness was. He had lung cancer. So
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
they are being very open, which I think is they should be commended for in keeping the public abreast of what's going on with his illness. But the issue of regency is bound to crop up, because if Charles is to become incapacitated,
What is he doing?
then things will have to pass to William, and they'll have to pass rapidly.
Prince Harry, meanwhile, rushed to the UK to see his father after the cancer diagnosis. But their meeting ended up being shorter than many would have expected. Here, Rebecca and Richard's Kay and Eden give their analysis of the story.
The point is made that it was a very whirlwind trip, and there's been some speculation about whether it was 30 or 45 minutes spent with his father at Clarence House, but it was
Wait for it.
a very short amount of time, given the amount of time he spent to get here. Now, I wouldn't necessarily personally read too much into that, because I know the King was tired and he was always planning to go to Sandringham that day. And I do think there's significance. He made a point of spending time with his son, especially given what's happened over the last few years.
It's a long way to come for 30 to 45 minutes.
Well, and actually I asked someone the other day, very well placed, and said, what do you think it was? And immediately they snapped back, guilt.
Really?
There's a lot of, I think while the King was always made clear that he wants to leave the door ajar for Harry, and we discussed that on this programme on Tuesday, didn't
That doesn't make sense.
we? I think there's a lot of people in the wider royal household that find what's happened over the last few years, not just in relation with the King and the Prince of Wales, but also with Queen Elizabeth, very difficult to forgive.
I wonder if any of those people spoke to Robert Jobson for today's Daily Mail piece, Richard Kay. It's a very interesting picture of the visit, saying, and I quote, "The King was unhappy about what amounted to a fait accompli served up by an emotional but well-meaning son." Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a very interesting insight into what may have taken place. I think the thing one shouldn't stress about the King and his relationships with his children is that despite being a loving father to two sons, he has throughout his life, it has been regimented and organised for him. Everything works to an endless series of deadlines. That helicopter was clattering around.
Stop it.
Ready to go. The King is the kind of person who would have said, I don't want it wasting fuel. We've got to get going. He hates keeping people waiting. He hates being kept waiting. And the other person to consider in that meeting yesterday is, of course, the Queen. Now, the Queen has less reason to welcome Prince Harry with open arms. She was treated disgracefully by him in his memoir, and she would have been very anxious about the amount of time